Welcome to Behind the Highlighter, where I share key points from books about lean, continuous improvement, leadership, self-improvement, and business culture. All right, so we're back to Behind the Highlighter. Really excited to have Mike Green with us today. Mike's the author of the wonderful book Wandermust, which is going to be the focus of today. Mike's also a master certified coach, does a lot of leadership coaching. I think one of the interesting things to know about Mike right out of the gate is he's worked on all 7 continents. So if you have read the book or you are going to get the book, you're going to learn an awful lot about Mike's experience around the world. So I got to meet Mike a couple months ago, maybe even as far as a year ago. I don't remember the exact date, through a mutual friend of ours, Wayne Herring, who runs a business coaching camp, and just really glad that Wayne introduced us. I don't even remember why we booked our first chat together, but I just remember leaving it like super energized, all excited about taking on the world, because you just did such an amazing job of talking through leadership and coaching and all the things you do. And then obviously, when I read your book, I just got super energized. It's very inspirational. I think I read nonfiction, and I read a lot of leadership and kind of educational stuff. So I'm in it to learn, right? And you were able to take that academic part and make it so entertaining just by telling people about your actual life, which is just really awesome. And so I'm not a super fast reader, but this was a flight to Oklahoma and back, and I had the whole book done, and then actually reread parts of it. So I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you are telling, I want to call it an entertaining story, but it's hard to call it a story when it's a documentary of your life, and super entertaining. And so I'm not gonna spoil too much here, because there's so much awesome stuff in here. But Mike Green, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, your coaching business, and your history here.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words and having me here today. Yeah, that's the whole intent of the book, is too often these leadership books that we have that are all valuable, don't get me wrong, are really thick. Thick in the sense of you have to read a couple chapters, put it down, think it through. Those have value. For me, my mindset that necessarily didn't work for me, so I had to tell the story. So that's part of the reason I wrote the book, and we'll get into that more later. So who am I? I'm a master certified coach with the ICF, International Coach Federation, and I've been in human performance for over 30 years, mainly working with individuals and helping them experience, much like the Outward Bound model, that you're able to do far more than your self-limiting beliefs. And I started doing that with Outward Bound years and years ago, and that's metamorphosized into facilitating leadership programs and such, until that one day when in the oil and gas industry, one of the superintendents came to me and said, "Why don't you take this to the drill rigs? You make more of an impact here." And I said, "Well, okay." He goes, "You got a business, don't you?" I go, "No." And so he basically mentored me to get my EIN number so that I could have a business, so that I could write a proposal, so that he could hire me to go out to the rigs and work with his crews. And from that point, it just blossomed, and it really, really honestly took off, not only in the oil and gas industry, but cybersecurity, aerospace, dude ranches, all around the world, in different organizations. Because people want to do better. So that's my business. But one of the things that you'll read about in the book is that I coach individuals or even teams on site in their office, if you will, or Zoom. But some of my clients come to Alaska. That's where I live with my family now, in the interior of Alaska. And much like the main client, Ian, or the main character, Ian, in the book, Wandermust, they come up to Alaska to work or to be coached as we do some types of outdoor activities, whether it be sea kayaking or backcountry experiences, world-class fly fishing, You name it, we do it. And I guide them through the backcountry, if you will, or the bush, as we call it here in Alaska. And I coach them on the intent of why they're there. And that's how the book came to be also, right? So there was a kind of culmination of many things. So that's who I am. That's who I work with. I also will be doing next year, first time ever, next summer, I'll be inviting 6 people to my winter home in Alaska during the summer months to do a group coaching experience where we'll actually base ourselves out of the house, be able to come home at night and do that experience.
Awesome. So before I get more into the book, just as I'm listening to you talk and describe your business, I know you've kind of coached a lot of like maybe what we would call senior leaders, so the C-suite type, all the top of the org chart, right?
True.
So is that the primary group that you see benefiting from your services, or are you seeing a lot of teams come in with maybe some other frontline people, or are you more of a kind of top of the org chart focused business?
Normally, I work with the top of the org chart, and then they have such a great experience, and they see that the coaching is so organic and it can support anyone that they usually have me go down the line to their second level leaders, down to almost to the new hires, or their even emerging leader program, if you want to call it that, or high potentials, and then also with their new hires. So it's honestly, it starts for the top and it filters all the way down. That's usually the way it goes. I would say a very high percentage of the time. However, the individuals that hire me outside of the realm of a business, they hire me for a specific just work-life balance kinds of things, or how do I do the best I can at work, and they pay for it out of their own pocket. And then ultimately, those around them see the value of not even knowing me, not even knowing they're being coached, until somebody says,
Right.
"Hey, wow, you're doing really well. What's going on?" And I go, "Well, I have a coach," and then they tell them, and then that person usually contacts me.
Awesome. Very good. Well, I appreciate that answer there. I don't kind of put you on the spot. But as you're explaining it, I really kind of got interested in. I know you and I talked, and I know a little bit, but didn't quite know that. I do want to ask you maybe one more question about your business before we really dive into the book. You kind of mentioned being offshore, and I'm in the oil and gas industry, so I think that was kind of one of the common things we had. Is there a specific industry that you seem to get requests from a lot, or a specific industry that you're just like, yeah, I don't really have much to offer them, or is it really any industry, any person?
Well, it's a two answer a question there. I work in high risk industries usually, and then ultimately that's what I focused on, because if you read the book, I did high risk work, everything from, although it's not written in the book, coal mining, commercial lobstering in the Gulf of Maine, heavy equipment operator in Iraq. So I worked in a lot of high risk industries, so I understand the mindset, etc. So that's how I started, and then ultimately it branched out into cybersecurity, which obviously is a high risk industry, but it's not necessarily, well, you're not going to get killed by a pinch point, right? So it's where everybody wants to be the best they can, or wants to have better leadership skills. So that's everywhere, right? So
Right. Great. Thanks.
Yep.
So
for example, I
was going to ask. Oh,
one of my clients is a flight nurse. In a flight nurse, for example, is one of my clients, and then also other industries that I work with are, cybersecurity companies or native corporations here in Alaska.
Awesome. So appreciate that, Mike. A little more depth. Learned a little bit there more about you, so that's awesome. So now I really would like to get into the book. Like I mentioned in the beginning here, just really appreciate the book. One of my favorites that I've read recently, no doubt about it. Got through it pretty quick. So I'm just going to kind of randomly grab some of the things that I tagged as things that I wanted to not only make sure I remembered, so I do highlight them with the old-fashioned highlighter. But as I'm doing that, I think about the things like, hey, that's something I really want to remember. I might want to come back to that for myself, but I'll also highlight things because I can think of somebody specifically that I'm trying to help that I'm like, wow, that would, I really need to share that. So these are things that are impactful for me, but also kind of to share out. So that's what we got here. I'm just gonna grab one for you here that we can talk about a little bit. And this is right in the beginning, and you talked about Ian as kind of the character in the book that represents kind of that top of the org chart type person who's leveraging your services here. And you say Ian's a high performer who understands that the skill set that got him where he is, while incredibly valuable, isn't enough to get him where he needs to go next. So I tag that sentence, and as I think about that, I can picture, myself as well as other people I know that, you have a level of success. So you're confident in your skill set and you're confident in yourself. So how do you get that moment that says, okay, I appreciate what got me where I am, but I don't have what I need to get me where I'm going, right? You kind of say here, it isn't enough to get him where he needs to go next. So how do you think people come to that realization? Like, how does Ian sit back and say, this isn't enough to get me there?
Hopefully they don't have a bad experience where they're like, oh, like, uh-oh. Hopefully they're aware enough, self-aware enough to like, wow, this is a skill set that I need to develop, or I need to find someone to support me along the way, like a mentor, or even a course, like someone who might want to do an MBA or something. But it also goes back to the quote, and I'll butcher it here. All that I know is that I know nothing, right? If they're that self-aware, they know that they're constantly evolving. And my book is basically formed, or the foundation is through the hero's journey of Joseph Campbell's work. So you're constantly being, and in the hero's journey, you're constantly learning, and you're looking for that sage or that mentor. Normally, those individuals, as I said before, that don't have a negative experience, or they're being told they need to be coached, turn out to be the best clients once you work with them and they get over themselves and get over, why am I doing this? They actually, I look forward to those types of clients, actually. So those who are self-aware are able to know that they need to do something, and they're willing to invest because they believe in the return of investment, whether it be time with their family, or whether it be the ability to mentor someone else, or the ability to get that next promotion or grade code.
Awesome. So you kind of got two categories: those people who had something happen and somebody's saying you need to get better, and those people who have that self-awareness that say I want to get better, right?
Yeah, like it's awesome. Like the meeting that you will walk into your boss's office and they say close the door, and then you do, right? Or as opposed to somebody saying congratulations, right?
Right. That's great. So the next one I got highlighted here, and I think this is, I don't know if this is a change in how people learn nowadays or a different philosophy, but anytime you can talk about 3 key points, or you've got here 4 pillars, right? My brain like lights up, right? Like I process that really well. And so you talk about here about 4 pillars. So respect for the 4 pillars of Outward Bound: self-reliance, physical fitness, craftsmanship, and compassion. So kind of what, obviously I highlighted that because it's, like I said, this is one of those things, those things click for me, right? Like, okay, so am I physically fit? Am I self-reliant? Craftsmanship. It makes it simple for me to kind of analyze where I'm at and where I need work. So maybe you could give us a little bit more on like, where did those 4 come from? And how do, how do they all link together, and how do you understand which one you maybe need the most help on?
Well, the 4 pillars came from Outward Bound, which was started during World War II with Kurt Hahn in Great Britain. And I'm not going to get into the history of it because it's very thick. It's a very deep history. However, he did much like you want. He like you say, he wanted to keep it simple for everyone involved. And here's the 4 pillars in order to survive, literally, a U-boat experience. Because a lot of the mariners during World War II, the older mariners were surviving being hit by a U-boat, right? Being sunk by a U-boat, and all the young people were not. And he decided, well, why is that? Well, because the old school guys had life experiences that showed that they can actually make it through this. So he started to delve into what are the things that would make people, what is the common thread for all these individuals, these older people. And he found out that they led lives that were physically fit because they were constantly moving. They were farmers or whatever have you. They were self-reliant. They made sure that they could take care of themselves before they take care of others. Craftsmanship is basically doing your best at everything you do and taking care of others, right? Service. So I was introduced to that when I was a senior in high school as an outward bound student, dog sledding, cross-country skiing. And that changed my life because, much like you say, it was really simple. And the kid with ADD, whatever you want to call it back in those days, all over the place, I can remember those 4 things. And in fact, I'm teaching them to my boys now, like we'll walk by something that's not done well. And I go, see that, boys? And they go, yep, that's not craftsmanship, Dad. Pride in one's work. That's a God's honest truth. We were at my brother's cottage in the lake, and the rope was really nice and coiled for the boat. And I said, see that, boys? They go, yeah, Dad, that's craftsmanship. And I go over there, I go, look at that guy over there. Go, that's not craftsmanship, Dad. I go, pride in one's work.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. I love that. I'm really glad you shared that because I think that's one of the things I've learned on my kind of journey in my career here is when you find these impactful things that make a difference, teaching them to your children, like, why wouldn't you, right? And I think a lot of people separate the work and family. And I know I've seen some of your posts and some of your stories, and what you're teaching professionals is the same thing you're teaching your children. And I try to do the same thing. And it's really cool to know that you've got them on the 4 pillars that impacted you as an 18-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't want to overdo it too. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, you can't chase them away, right? Dad's too much of a teacher. It feels like school, right?
I did.
But for anybody who reads the book, when you think about all of the experiences that you've had and all the amazing things that have gone on in your life, that you can remember 4 pillars that were taught to you as an 18-year-old kid in high school is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one I want to go into here is around leadership. And so you talk here, you say, another part of my responsibility as a leader was considering the question from where to lead. Sometimes it's best from out in front, sometimes in the middle, sometimes from the back. It's essential a leader know how to best support a group's movement forward. You've got a lot of other great stuff there, but I want to stop right there because I think for me personally in my journey, but also working with others, when you start in what people will deem a leadership role, I think most people think you have to be in front, right? I think that's just the standard. Like, whoever's follow me, I'm in front. And I know in my career, I've learned it the hard way that I probably should have been more towards the back or more towards the middle or sat this one out and given somebody else an opportunity. And so as I read this, I just, I gravitated right towards it because I know I've made that mistake. And so I guess my question for you on this one would be, if somebody's really struggling with this, what are some indicators they might be able to find on where you should be leading from? Because I think that can be a challenge for a new leader.
If I understand your question right, you're asking if someone's struggling as a leader, they're not sure where they should be, where should they go? Is that right? Where should they lead from?
Like, what's a good indicator that maybe I'm not self-aware to realize I should have been in the middle or I should have been at the end? Because you talk about it being very physical, it changes, right? It's it's fluid. You're not always in the front.
Right.
Depends on the situation, right? Or maybe the team dynamic or something.
Right. Okay. So the easy answer to that would be if it's not working, stop. Right. That's the easy answer. However, if I were interacting with an individual, I would say, what's the intention of this project or this goal, etc., and who's responsible, who's ultimately accountable as well, and then talk to that individual or that coach about, or the group about, what's the intention of what we're doing here and how does this fit into the bigger picture. And usually if you ask the group and you're emotionally intelligent enough, you don't give them the answer, and you have the patience, right, and the ability to master silence, you will get some good nuggets. And just, yes, it's really worried and you want to fill up that space with a lot of noise, etc., because I'm awful nervous, blah, blah, blah. Just, what's the intention here? Let's just stop for a moment, which is usually the hardest part, is just to stop. What are we doing? And usually that's kind of a shock to everyone, that kind of question. I mean, what do you mean, what are we doing? You know?
Right.
So, no, really, what are we doing here? What's the intention, and how does it fit into the big picture?
Right.
And how best, if I was a servant leader, I am a servant leader, I would say, how best can I serve the group in order for us to do that? And that's probably somebody in the middle leading, right? I mean, a person who asked that question, probably in the middle, talking to the group. He's right. I think about it, if I was in the back of the group, I'm talking to the back of the heads. If I'm in the middle of the group, I'm surrounded by them, saying, how can we better serve? How can I serve you as a group if I was the so-called leader?
So in asking how to best serve a team in a leadership role, one of the questions could possibly be, from where? If everybody's speaking that language of front, middle, back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Good. So the next one I tagged here, and I think you and I talked about this. So I do, the lean continuous improvement work here. So reducing and eliminating waste is always front of my mind. So I had to just pull this sentence out. Some distractions keep people distracted forever, and they never find their truths. And so in my world, distraction is waste. You're not progressing towards the mission, the goal, the end product efficiently if you're distracted. So I really do, just that right there, just those two short sentences, to me, just flips the light bulb. And so my question for you is, in your experience with a lot of the kind of C-suite folks that you're catching, do you ever find that they don't even realize they're distracted? And if so, how do you get them to understand that that's not contributing to where you want to go?
Usually a very good coaching question would sometimes snap them into it. Hopefully they have an experience with a coach in a room in a safe, and I even hate to use the word safe space, but in a place where they can, like, oh my God, I can have that realization. I did not know. It's, shattering their paradigm, right? But I have to do this. Like, for example, I coached an amazing leader regarding the constant morning meeting. Why do you have these meetings? Because we've had them in the past. Are your people getting value? I think so. I mean, in actuality, me having worked around them, they're all like, why are we doing this? So you have to ask those questions, and that's where you're being in service as a coach and understanding how best to serve that person innately. I think I do well. That's why I'm very successful. Is asking that question of, why are you doing this? And then you just get through the questions and they realize, I cannot believe that, right? That's an easy case, right? So everybody's listening, right. Like, oh yeah, okay, Mike, great, rainbows and unicorns. However, when people come to Alaska and they take their phone and they're looking around and realize they don't have coverage, and they get that drop shock when the helicopter goes away, you're like, wow, that's really cool. Oh yeah. And all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, we're out here. My phone doesn't work. And you know what they're most afraid of when they land is that a bear's behind every bush. And you know what? That's not the biggest danger. The biggest danger is the lack of distractions, because their phone's not binging whatever. They don't even let them bring their phone. Usually I have them buy a camera. Anyway, that is what scares them. And that's what's got to shock them into really, much like Ian goes through, what really is important.
Yeah.
What really is important.
Yeah. Shock you into realizing what's a distraction and what isn't.
People come here intentionally to figure that out because they get so much, and I say this respectfully, noise. And I'm not saying all noise is bad, and I'm not saying it's all good either. I'm just saying noise.
Right.
Or waste, as you say, right?
Yeah, waste. Right. Yeah. So I like one thing you said there when you ask these questions, they say, I think so. Right. And in my world, I get that a million times, right? When we're looking at different things. Oh, I think so. I think so. And my question is always, is it important enough that you want to know so instead of thinking so? Get some data, right? If it's important, get data. You shouldn't think so if it's something that really matters to your development. And so I like that you kind of brought that up.
You're pushing on their paradigm, and their paradigm is a safe space, and I'm poking, but you really are poking at them. Okay, what will it take to know? That's what I say a lot. What will it take to know? I mean, think is great. But...
Yeah, sometimes you better know. If it's important, you better know.
Yeah.
So this next one I got highlighted. Actually, it kind of bolts on to what we just talked about. So I'm gonna share this because I like the picture it painted for me. And then you could go deeper on it if you want, but we may have already touched on it. But anyway, now you go on to talk about Ian and you're pausing and there's a realization there. And so it's about his socks, right? So when I think about waste and extra things, when I read this, I was like, wow, that's a really cool visual that makes me think about a lot. But I'm going to read a little bit of it here and comment on something else I really like about this. But it says the uncomfortable truth is I have been living with the discomfort of wearing an extra pair of socks for a long time, and it has not served me. I like that word "served me" in there. So it's time to stop and evaluate. And I think stop is hard for a lot of professional people in business. You got deadlines, and stopping doesn't feel like it's going to help you get there. Not plow through life. It's time to get rid of the unnecessary pair of socks. So to me, I think that just paints a wonderful picture about pausing, understanding where you're supposed to be going. And just because you've been dealing with it for a long time doesn't mean you can't reevaluate and not plow forward. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that if you want, but I think that bolts on nicely to what we just talked about. So do you have any other thoughts there you want to share?
Yeah, Ian was and is such a hard charger. The hardest thing for him was to stop before he got a hot spot, because I'm constantly asking my clients, how's your feet feeling? At first they're looking at me like, you're crazy. What do you care about my feet? No, how are your feet feeling? And through life, everybody says, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, and only until we have to stop. And that's the hardest part sometimes, to evaluate, because again, some people find solace in movement, whether it be chaotic or not.
So they mistake activity for progress, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I never say I'm busy. I'm always well scheduled.
Well scheduled. I like that. I like that. I'm a big fanatic of understanding how important words can be to people. So when I see something that somebody might say, well, that's wrong, I say it's not wrong. It's an opportunity to be better. And so I like that. I'm not busy. I'm well scheduled. Right. Changes your you turned it into a positive really quickly. I like that. So now I'm going to go into the chapter here, and I am actually not going to everything I highlighted. I'm just trying to spread out across the book, or we could be here for the rest of the day. But this, I believe, was in the chapter when you were in Antarctica, and I really like this chapter because I think you talk a lot about you're put into this leadership role, but maybe weren't quite experienced or equipped to be the strongest leader you could, and you had some struggles, right? And then you kind of did some on-the-job learning and made some really I think some really critical pivots, right? And so in here you say, from that point on, I continued each working day as an emotionally intelligent servant leader to my group, asking myself, how can I help? What is important to them for the remaining weeks on the ice? So those are two great questions, I think, for a servant leader. And so what I'd like to hear is, do you have any other that you've evolved into saying this is a good question to ask? Or, I think it'd be interesting to know, like if you ever asked those questions and they didn't help.
Yeah. Well, I'd be lying if I said, of course they help all the time, right? But they
Right.
not all the time. Another question I ask, it's really a very good, powerful question, is what is the situation or experience or feeling trying to teach me or ask me? That's a real good question for my clients. That's not in the book. The whole experience in Antarctica, I mean, I set myself up to fail. It's those traps and triggers that we put up, or those traps that we lay for ourselves, not even knowing it. I mean, I interviewed literally when I was in Iraq, in the sands of Iraq, for the job on the ice of Antarctica. And I said, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And literally, I said that. I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. I mean, I can unload a Chinook helicopter with a telescoping forklift. Yeah, I can do that down there. That's literally how I got the job as a lead. And then only to fail miserably in front of everybody, like day 2. And unfortunately, but fortunately, in Antarctica, you literally work and live with one another. So there's no separation. And once the word got out, it was, and then I became and honestly, I was an asshole as a leader, because I just went back to what I knew was bull in the china shop. Just get it done, and then it took a very small captain of the Kiwi or New Zealand Air Force, which everyone loves a Kiwi because they're so nice. But she threw me up against a very large tire, got in my face, and that's where it all changed. So I'm always thankful for her.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So on those 2 questions, are those questions that you're typically asking of yourself, or are you outwardly engaging the team and asking them, or is it both? Like, do you feel like you have to do both?
I would lay some foundation. I would lay a foundation of relationship capital before I start laying those kinds of words on people. Much like you just said, words are important. Yeah. And if all of a sudden I came out saying, well, everyone, what's really important to the group today? Like, who's this guy? Especially in high risk industries, they're like, get out of here. Take your rainbows and unicorns, and I'm in fairy dust or whatever, So you really, I wouldn't say I would just, my actions would model that, right? And my actions would model it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it right off the bat. Relationship capital is important.
Relationship capital, I like that. Good. I want to go one more on this, because I think this is, and it's not, specifically in here, but I'm just, as we're talking about your Antarctic experience, and I thought back to the first time I was actually put in kind of a leadership role where I had more than, I think my first one was like 2 people, and I knew them both my whole life. So it wasn't, that was a little different, but I had my first kind of leadership role where I had a dozen people kind of in my care. I didn't call it that back then because I was 25 years old and bull in a china shop, right? I made a lot of those mistakes, and I gained their trust really quick by showing the humility, but basically coming out and saying, I screwed that up pretty good. What can we do better? And I've this has been a philosophy I've had for a long time. Like, everybody talks about, like, effective teams trust each other. It takes so long to build trust. And I just have this philosophy that humility is almost a fast track to trust. Like, if you can get in front of that group and say, I suck, I need to do better. I think you do get a little trust. You do get a little credibility. So I don't know if you specifically mentioned it in here, but I know you tell the story about how you evolved as a leader there and became better. But did you have that kind of moment, like where you had to come clean and basically say, could have been better?
Oh yeah, very much so. I wrote about it in the book, and I still feel the experience as I'm telling you about it right now. I mean, it was tough. And I needed to, and then I had to take it. I said, hey, and I said some expletives and such, and I know what you feel about me. I thought I was hot shit in Iraq doing this and that, and I got the job, and I thought it was great that I got a lead. And I know how disrespectful it is to many of you because you've worked on the ice. And I basically said stuff like that, and then I said, I'm sorry, and what do we need to say here or do in order to go forward as a group? You can do it. You can say it to me now, or you can say it to me privately. But I just want you to know from this day forward, I'm going to do my very best to be a better leader, and I'm asking for your help. And if you don't want to help, that's fine. Just tell me, and I'll in your own way, and I'll leave you alone for a time. But just know I'm going to do better.
Awesome. So I think
and that's when things changed for me.
Right. And so moving forward now, you've used that opportunity to change the way you lead, and you're sharing that opportunity with other people so that they maybe don't have to go through it as painfully as you did. Because I think you do get in some detail there about how miserable that was for a while for you down there, and how the team was struggling, right? So
the loneliest man on the ice,
right? That's got to be a tough place to be lonely. So those were kind of the main key, I'll say, business leadership points that I really wanted to pull out of the book from a highlighter standpoint. But what I didn't highlight, and I wish I would have, or at least documented it, is some of the different experiences. So you talked about being with a tribe that hunts with eagles, which I think is like just it was so cool. I probably could have read a whole book just about that, So of all those different things, maybe you could take one or two of those that you think are either maybe the most unique or had the biggest impact on you, and talk to us a little bit about kind of what's those I don't want to say non-professional experiences, but those like the good stories, like the good like what was just like that moment where you're like, I didn't even know the world offered this, and here I am, because you've got a couple examples in here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll go from the books into the Kazakh golden eagle hunters, the Western Mongolia in the Atalay Mountains, which is where the snow leopard lives. So they are Muslims, and to be a devout Muslim, you pray 5 times a day, and that to an American is a lot of extra time. Having been raised Catholic and go to church once a week at most.
Right.
I really found amazing their intention of how focused they are. The golden eagle hunter is for their golden eagle, and how difficult it is just to get a golden eagle, right? You just don't go to the store and buy it. There's basically 3 ways you get a golden eagle, and one of the ways is that you literally find where they're nesting and then ultimately climb up and get the nest, go to the nest and get the eaglet. When, as they do in Mongolia, they'll put their fingers across like that. When the back feathers are crossed, that's when they're ready to be taken. If you can survive the mother coming at you, that's a good way to do it. And so you have to go through this toil in order to have the honor to raise this eaglet into a golden eagle that will ultimately help support your family with fur, because honestly it's very expensive in a way that the best meat of the house or the yurt or the ger for the Western Mongolia is given to the golden eagle. So the best choice, I mean, it's only small scraps, but they get fed first. I mean, that's how reverent they are. And they do it not only before the eagle, but for their father who taught them, for their father's father that taught them. And when they go out, they give a prayer to their whole their lineage. And they say a prayer for themselves, and they say a prayer for the eagle as well, for the eagle's heritage. So it's really an amazing experience just to be a part of that. And the bond that they all have, the eagle hunter with the eagle, and then also the family with the eagle, because it's a love affair that is very, very powerful.
Yeah, I just was told, like I said, I probably could read a whole book on eagle hunters because that part of the book was
Yeah,
just so fascinating to me.
yeah.
So I know you had that experience, and it was, you learned a lot from it, and it was very impactful. But I don't, I think I remember this from the book. But you've been back, right? You've done it more than once. Like is that correct?
No, I've only been
Oh,
once. I've
you've
only
done it
been there
once. Okay,
once.
okay.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
still in contact with those folks. Unfortunately, the mullah passed away, and the mullah from the Valley of the White Rock. That's where he's from. Yeah, good people.
right. Good
I
people.
think of them
Yeah,
often.
great story. Great story. Do you maybe have one more? Because I mean, I know that there's
Sure.
cutting trees in Ireland and all these other great things. Like, was there another one there that you think, either you learned the most from, or it was the most fun, right? Because some of your experiences were very challenging, but I would imagine
Oh,
weren't fun while they were happening. But when you got done, it probably had to feel awesome coming back. So I don't know if maybe you want to pick one more experience from the book that you want to share here.
from the book. Okay. Well, I would say that one of the experiences that really supports me a lot in the modality of feeling ready, if you will. Okay, so we've all had those moments where you got to get ready to step in front of on the stage to have a presentation, or you got a crucial conversation you're about to have with an employee, or so you've all known that I got to feel ready, right? So there's a physical modality that I have, and I learned this on the slopes of Cotopaxi in Ecuador. Cotopaxi is the highest active volcano on the planet. It's approximately 19,327 feet or something like that. And as I'm getting ready to do the midnight ascent, as I'm guiding my people with the help of mountaineer guides, I went outside to get a breath of fresh air and to experience it. It was a beautiful, clear night. The sparkles and the, the snow was sparkling. It was just magical. And I was so taken by it that the cold seeped into my boots. And I was like, wow, my feet are cold. All of a sudden I realized, wow, my feet are cold. This is not good. So I laced up my boots nice and tight like I normally do. And it's when I was lacing those boots up that I had a feeling like I am ready. I'm going to do this. That feeling around my ankles and that feeling of lacing up my boots and being done with it and stepping forward was a modality of being ready. I can do this. I've done everything I can to be ready for this moment. Where notice I didn't say anything about self-doubt. I said I've done everything I can to get here. So I'm stepping forward into this experience, and that's served me so very well throughout my life. That what do I need to do in order to be able to feel that way? That when I lace up my boots, I can get I'm ready to go and leave self-doubt behind me so that I can step into the experience and provide the best experience as I can.
Literally step into the experience in your
Literally. I
laced up
mean,
boots. Yeah.
well, I didn't tell you that the visual that I get, and this is no joke, the Kiss Destroyer album cover, when Gene Simmons has
Yeah.
got his boot out front.
Right.
That's the vision that I get, believe it or not, because that was one of the best album covers as a kid, right? He's got
Right.
these big boots, right? I feel
Yeah.
that confident, like Gene Simmons stepping. That's true.
I love that. So it's a
You know?
little bit of a motivation and visualization, and that's
Yeah,
awesome. Little
yeah,
inspiration. So
yeah.
I
That's
do
it.
have one more highlighted thing towards the end here that I want to end with. But before I do that, was there anything else in the book that, I mean, obviously I didn't read all my highlighters. There's a lot of other amazing stuff in
Sure.
there, but was there like this one key thing where you're like, darn it, I wish you would have brought that up? Is there anything that you can think of that I totally swung and missed on as far as leadership stories to share that somebody would want to know here?
I don't think you missed anything, so thank you for that. Um, I, I, I'm grateful that I was able to be introduced to Stephen Pressfield. Right, he's a great author, and in his book, the War of Art, I believe that's his book. I listened to it on audio. And he talks about the muse. there is and he helped me understand what a muse is, so that when I look back in my life in the chapter of courage, when I was a school teacher, and I literally had 2 out-of-body experiences in front of my students, right? And in fact, I was just home, my hometown, and I saw one of them and goes, "Mr. Green, you remember that day?" That's a true story. I saw him, and my wife saw him. He's like, "Holy cow!" I really. Anyway, the muse was Stephen Pressfield. That we all have a voice within us that is doing our best to guide us. I believe that, and I wish I would have been introduced to that thought process prior to leaving my high school or understanding it, because there is a voice within us, or there's something within us. He calls it a muse, especially in the book of Art of War of Art, that I would have understood exactly what was happening as I had that out-of-body experience. The muse was working, helping me understand that, yeah, you're miserable being a high school teacher, teaching to these bells, to teaching to the test and such. You got to go off and do something better. You have so much more bigger things. Nothing against teachers, but for me, I knew the muse helped me realize, hey, you got more of life to experience. You're not meant to be a school teacher at this juncture of your life. Thus, the 2 out-of-body experiences, of which you got to read, because I mean that's how it happened, you know. So yeah. I mean that's.
Well, I'm not even going to let you spoil that. I'm gonna just tell people that what that experience turned into for Mike is really incredibly entertaining and really impressed me. It's in the book, so you get the book for that story. That's a really good one. But it's interesting because I just fumbled over this page, and I got to go backwards on you here, because this one, it's just these handful of words in the middle of a chapter that I highlighted. It says, "I pitched a TP for Harrison Ford."
Yeah, that's true.
So what era Harrison Ford was this? Is this early Star Wars? Is this the Indiana Jones Harrison Ford? Is it Witness? Where are we at? Fugitive?
Oh, it was
early.
It was 2000. It was year 2000.
Okay.
I think he was still married before he went and started a relationship with that woman who ultimately became Ellen DeGeneres' girlfriend, wife, or whatever. But I was hitchhiking through Jackson Hole, and I stopped at an ex-girlfriend's place, and because that's where my ride left me, and she wasn't really happy about that, but I was able to stay. That's the truth. And her roommates were these 2 guys that would get all kinds of extra work on the side doing projects for the super rich, or the caretakers of the super rich of the area. And they said, "Hey, listen, we got to put up a teepee tomorrow." They're just kind of talking about, "I got to put up a teepee." I go, "I put up a teepee before." They go, "You have? Oh, good. You can come with us." And I was like, "Listen, all right, I'll do it." So it's actually a really, really funny story. Probably not appropriate, but I went there and I started putting the teepee up, and it was hot. And I took my shirt off because it was hot. And I was putting up the teepee, and all the caretakers, of which are of the persuasion that they like men, all of a sudden just started conjugating, watching me put this teepee up, and I was putting it up. You know, you got 18 poles, etc. Right. Anyway, at the end of it, the caretaker came to me and said, "Well, you know, here's your money. You did a really good job. I give you extra money because those guys didn't do anything but just drink beer." And they handed me the money. I go, no, I don't want to touch it. And the guy goes, "What's wrong with you?" and I said, "Well, I'm hitchhiking to Alaska with no money or no food on purpose." And he just looked at me like, "Why would you want to do that?" And then he went off and told those guys, and they were all like, "Oh my God, really?" So they were like, "You can stay here and work for us." And oh, it was so funny. It was a funny story. And those 2 guys were lazy, and all they did was drink beer in the middle of the day, like noon.
Hot day, Jackson Hole, drinking beer.
Yeah, that was true. That's funny.
Good. That's awesome, Mike. Thanks for sharing. So I'm going to go here.
And actually,
afterward.
before I forget,
Yeah.
the reason we were setting up the TP was they were having probably in the magazine, Wine Spectator magazine was coming to do a photo shoot, and they had these beautiful buffalo robes. It was really beautiful. Afterwards, they made it nice, so it was great.
Yeah, I guess
Anyway,
I got distracted
maybe
by
you
the
could
fact
find
that
it.
it's Harrison Ford's teepee that I didn't even ask why a teepee, but I guess you.
Yeah, it's got a property and stuff, a really high-end property, and they were putting it up. Who knows? I just went there to do it.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Very cool. So I want to turn to something here at the afterwards. So in the beginning, you talked a little bit about why you wrote the book, and that's something I'm always interested in knowing, and obviously I've got some ideas. But you say it right here. You say, in writing this book, I never set out to tell you what your life and leadership truths should look like. My truths might be similar to yours, or they might be entirely different. Instead, I wrote this book with the hope that my experience might invite and empower you to answer your own hero's journey. And so that's your purpose. I don't know if you're keeping score, but I can tell you, you can put a check mark down for me, because you've definitely empowered and inspired me to get kind of beyond where I was already sitting after reading this, and honestly kind of in a lot of ways, I view myself as a go-getter and fairly successful. And I read this and I said, well, I really haven't done much. I could do a heck of a lot more, because this guy has achieved just so much and challenged himself to the highest level. So you definitely got me with your intent here. So anything else
Well,
you
I
want to share
appreciate
before we wrap up here?
Grateful to spend some quality time with you. You're a man that I admire, because you do things that I hope to be able to do one day, and that is to lean my life in regards to the extra stuff that I don't need.
Appreciate that. And hopefully I can be a resource there for you, like you've been a resource for me on the leadership front. So awesome, Mike. The book is Wandermust. Is there a specific place that you prefer people to go buy this if they're out looking?
You can go to my website, mygreenleadership.com. You can download the first chapter for free, or you can go on Amazon and buy it. It's got over 100 5-star reviews at this juncture, and it's been on every continent. That's people have taken it around the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Amazon's kind of that easy spot for people. Go get the thing, right?
True.
Awesome, Mike. And then you mentioned your website, MikeGreenLeadership.com. So I know, like you said, you can get the first chapter of the book there for free. Is there any other key things you want people to know about the website that they should be looking for if they head out there?
Yeah. If you've liked what you've heard today from both Lucas and I, reach out to both of us. And happy to support you in any way I can. A friend of Lucas, this is a friend of mine, and we can support one another. Great.
Yeah, I know I've got a LinkedIn account up there. Is that somewhere where people can find you, or do you have a recommendation beyond the website, LinkedIn or the website?
Mike Green MCC or Mike Green Leadership on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I know you've been pretty active on there. I see a lot of comments and posts, so not hard to find. All right, Mike. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you. I'm hoping sunny Alaska this time of year. Calling in and having the conversation with us. So thanks a lot, man, and wish the best to you and your family.
My best to yours as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good day.
You too.